The Bone King spoke, her voice smooth and commanding, like a queen addressing a subject. It's fine. Her tone carried an eerie elegance, an unnatural grace that didn't match her monstrous form. I heard you seized Kling Fortress and even brought the Sword Saint into the tribe. I'm very pleased. Hearing that feminine, regal voice, Lin Tian's mind cramped up in disbelief. This makes no sense. What does that thing even use to produce such a voice? The absurdity of it made him smile unconsciously, though he quickly suppressed it. With practiced humility, he replied, Everything that happened was simply due to luck. A low-level goblin capable of doing all this. You expect me to believe it was luck? She paused, then continued, her tone shifting to something almost amused. Don't worry. I'm not blaming you. On the contrary, I'll reward you. Her skeletal fingers tapped the armrest of her throne. Albedo-kudan, to be favored by the great Bone King is an honor for you. Then, impossibly, she smiled. An unnatural expression that sent a chill down Lin Tian's spine. I also know taking down the Lizard Lord was your doing, she continued. The Eagles reported that the one currently managing that territory is a subordinate of yours. I understand your little schemes. A trace of embarrassment flickered in Lin Tian's eyes. He could only offer an awkward smile, his mind racing. How much does she actually know? The Bone King paused, letting the tension thicken. Then, with eyes full of disdain, she declared, If you want to seize the monster resources in my great tomb, I will allow it, but you will serve as the Southern Lord, and the monster lord of the entire great tomb. Silence. Lin Tian stunned, unsure if he'd heard correctly. It wasn't just him. The other monsters in the throne room, who had been idly amusing themselves moments before, froze in shock. What's going on? This was far too much favor. Murmurs erupted. Why would the Bone King make such a decision? Even Albedo, the Bone King's most trusted advisor, was visibly shaken. Honey, are you crazy? She blurted out, her voice sharp with disbelief. Even if I don't care about the monsters outside, handing control to a low-level goblin, even I think that's going too far. If he controls all the monsters in the Great Tomb, isn't that sending them to their deaths? Most of them will be eaten by goblins. Then, what's this? The Bone King's voice dropped to a whisper. Are you saying you're afraid of a goblin? Her gaze burned into Albedo, who immediately fell silent, her defiance crumbling. With a stiff bow, she stepped back, muttering an apology. The Bone King dismissed her with a glance, as if the outburst had never happened. Yet Lin Tian still couldn't believe it. She's just handing me authority over the entire demonized forest? True, he wouldn't be able to force high-intelligence races to obey, but countless low-intelligence monsters would fall under his command. And more importantly, he was allowed to hunt them freely. Before he could fully process the implications, the Bone King issued her final decree. From now on, you are the Southern Lord and Great Lord. Your tribe is permitted to hunt monsters in large numbers. But you will bear the responsibility. If anyone dares to invade the Great Tomb, you must resist them with all your might. Lin Tian bowed deeply, masking his racing thoughts behind a facade of gratitude. Many thanks for your grace, Great Bone King. I will destroy every enemy without fail. His voice was respectful, but his expression was deeply complicated. I see. Everyone here was an old fox, creatures who had lived for countless years scheming in the shadows. And now? He was a wanted criminal, hunted relentlessly by both the Triple Lion Empire and the Church. The Bone King wasn't rewarding him, she was making him the shield. They want me on the front lines, fighting their enemies, while they sit back and reap the benefits. A cold smirk tugged at his lips. How devious. Scene shift, and he returned home. When he delivered the news, Goba's face lit up with unrestrained joy. He clapped his hands together, his voice brimming with admiration. Boss, you're amazing! Even someone that powerful treats you with respect. I admire you so much! But the Goblin Slayer's sharp eyes narrowed. Unlike Gobu, he saw the hidden danger lurking beneath the surface. His voice was low, edged with warning. Goblin, you idiot! We're about to become cannon fodder, and you're still here gushing like a fool? Lin Tian sighed, rubbing his temples. After years of scheming against others, he had never expected to be ensnared in someone else's plot, one that left him trapped, with no retreat and no clear path forward. The Goblin Slayer's voice was grim. A church that could suppress an immortal like the Bone King for decades. With our current strength, fighting them is suicide. Even with the Sword Saint here, victory isn't guaranteed. Lin Tian knew they had only one option: rest, recover, and prepare in secret. He forced a confident smile, masking his unease. I already have a plan. Don't worry. The final victor will be us, not the Empire, not the Church. But beneath his calm exterior, doubt gnawed at him. That night, Lin Tian activated the life simulation system. A mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Life simulation system initializing. Current scenario: becoming the Great Lord. The vision unfolded before him. Miraculously, he ascended as the Great Lord of the demonized forest. In reality, he was merely a pawn, a sacrificial piece in someone else's grand scheme. Trapped in an open conspiracy, he secretly mass-produced low-level goblins and trained an elite army. But it wasn't enough. 6 months later, the Empire and the Church launched their assault. His forces, like pebbles under a steamroller, were crushed without resistance. The simulation's verdict was merciless. Score 0 out of 100. Reward 0 vitality. Simulation end. Time progress 6 months. Lin Tian jolted back to reality, his breath ragged. 6 months. Not long, but enough to change fate, if he acted wisely. Beside him, Alice stirred, her soft voice cutting through the silence. Messenger, what's wrong? Lin Tian exhaled sharply. I'm wondering if there's any way to reach the epic tier before it's too late. Alice considered this, then nodded toward his hand. That's simple. You just need the right artifact, like the ring you stole. Lin Tian froze, staring at the ring he had forgotten. A spark of realization ignited in his mind. His previous approach had been too narrow, focused on crude forgeries when his enemies wielded enchanted steel. Goblin smiths could craft light armor, but full plate? Magical weapons? Impossible. Yet if he could arm his army with enchanted blades. He turned to Alice urgently. Is there any way to acquire a stockpile of magical weapons? Her reply was swift and crushing. No. Lin Tian's hopes shattered like glass. But Alice wasn't finished. Magical weapons are rare. Since the dwarves vanished, only 2 remain in the Empire. The Church? Rumors say they possess a world-class relic. The dwarves, once blessed by the gods, masters of the forge, had disappeared decades ago, taking their secrets with them. Alice's suggestion was cold but pragmatic. If you seek answers, ask within the Great Tomb. But be careful. If the Bone King learns of your search... Lin Tian's jaw tightened. Asking openly was suicide. Then, a memory flashed. The Dragon Mother. If anyone knew the dwarves' fate, it was her. The next day, Lin Tian mounted his dragon, its massive wings unfurling with a thunderous snap as they launched into the sky. The wind roared past them, carrying the salt tang of the sea as they soared toward the horizon. Hours passed, the sun blazing overhead, until at last Dragon Island came into view. But something was terribly wrong. Where there had once been lush forests, and the echoing calls of dragons, now only a skeletal wasteland remained. Gaunt creatures, beasts Lin Tian had never seen, prowled the ruins. Dismounting, he pressed deeper into the island, his boots crunching over scattered bones, some still clad in remnants of dragon's scales. Silence. Then, memory struck like a blade. The Dragon Mother had spoken of this. She had never truly belonged here. To her, Dragon Island had been nothing more than a fleeting rebellion, a young dragon's whim. In her own words, she was barely more than a hatchling. By her kin's reckoning, no older than a human girl of 15. And not even among the strongest of her kind. The journey would be brutal. Potentially lethal. But if he succeeded, if he found them, the knowledge they held could change everything. Even if the dragon mother knew nothing, the elder dragons might. Decision made, he studied the sun's arc, aligned his path, and took flight. 5 days passed in a blur of wind and exhaustion. Then, the world tree erupted across the sky. Its trunk was wider than cities, its bark etched with grooves deeper than canyons. Above, its crimson leaves formed a second firmament, filtering the sunlight into a bloody glow. The sheer scale of it choked the air from Lin Tian's lungs. No legend from his old world could have prepared him for this. The closer they flew, the more the tree swallowed the horizon, until even his dragon seemed no larger than a speck of dust. Yet, after hours of searching, no dragons appeared. A thick, cloying mist engulfed them as they descended, its tendrils clinging like wet silk. Then, heat. A roar of molten fury. Below churned an ocean of lava, its surface seething with eruptions of liquid fire. One misstep, one faltering beat of his dragon's wings, and they would vanish into the inferno. Sweat revered down Lin Tian's back, his vision wavering in the blistering air. His dragon shuddered beneath him, wings straining. Nothing could survive this. Deep in the magma, something uncoiled. From the molten lava, a mountain-sized dragon emerged, its scales glistening like burning coal. Its icy, murderous gaze swept over Lin Tian, the goblin, and the small, low-born dragon beside them. "This is no place for the likes of you," the colossal beast rumbled, its voice like grinding stone. "Leave now, or bear the consequences." The sheer presence of the ancient dragon sent Lin Tian's smaller companion trembling in fear. It scrambled behind a boulder, as if the rock could somehow shield it from the overwhelming power before them. Several more dragons slithered from the mist-covered cliffs, each as massive as a giant lizard, their serpentine bodies stretching hundreds of meters. Their eyes locked onto the intruders. "Our dragon clan's territory, and now any kind of trash dares to wander in," one sneered, its voice laced with mocking amusement. Another let out a derisive snort. "Eat them. I wouldn't even dirty my mouth."